Okay, grade 5 in 5 minutes, AQA English language, paper 2. Hopefully you've seen the paper 1 video where we looked at ideas for reading more purposefully and reducing stress and anxiety in that exam in an effort to allow us to be more focused and have a clearer idea of what we're doing in order to gain a grade 5 or above. If you haven't downloaded the resources yet, make sure you've got them in front of you. The best way to use this video is to have those copies of the exam papers that I've provided in front of you so that as I highlight stuff on the screen, you can highlight it too. And use that as a tip for doing it for real in the exam as well and highlighting those questions. So make sure you've got those in front of you. You can download them below using the link, or you can go to mrcrawfordenglish.co.uk. Again, the same as with paper 1 video, we're going to look at reading more purposefully and trying to reduce some of the stress and anxiety. Again, just like with paper 1, the best thing to do is have a sneak peek at the questions to come, because if we know what the questions are, it means that when we first read the sources, we can be looking out for lines or quotes or sentences or words, things that will help us to answer those questions when we get to it. Hopefully it will therefore mean that we haven't got to reread the texts 4, 5, 6 times. We'll just need to read them once or twice to get a clear idea of what's going on and to gain that evidence that we're going to need to answer the questions when we get to them. Remembering, of course, when you do get to read the sources, read them with a pen so that you can underline or highlight lines that will help you later on, and don't forget to label why you've highlighted it. So it's all about saving ourselves some time. Reading the extracts properly is absolutely vital. I've put this one in red, the second bullet point down. A possible option here is to go to question 3 first, particularly if you're a little bit anxious about the fact that there are 2 sources to read. Question 3 only deals with one of the sources. It could be A or B. You'll need to read the question to find out which. In this case it's source B, but it might be worth just focusing on question 3 to start with. Either way, we're going to read all of the questions first in any case, but then at that point, once you've read all the questions, you might want to tackle question 3 first, because it means you only need to read one source in order to answer it. You could then read the second source afterwards and go back to questions 2 or 4. We know in this exam we're going to have to do a synthesis question where we summarise the similarities or the differences. We're going to have a language question and a comparison question. So we'll go to question 3 first, because that's the one that's only linked to one of the texts. And I've highlighted it on there. You might want to do the same. Only refer to source B. It would be an absolute travesty if you ended up talking about the wrong source, because you're not going to achieve as many marks for that, because you can't demonstrate a clear response, and therefore you can't possibly get a grade 5 for this question. I've also highlighted the part of the question that's the most important. How is language used to make you feel positive about the impact of nurses? And again, I would highlight that question so that it helps you to maintain a clear focus on what you're writing about. So we'll go to question 2. Question 2 requires us to look at source A and source B, and I've highlighted that in the question. The importance of nurses is explained in both. We need to use both of the sources to write a summary of the similarities. The question could be similarities or it could be differences, and that's really important to spot in the question. It sounds ridiculous to highlight all of the keywords in the question, but actually, if we want a grade 5, we know that the word clear is associated with that in the mark scheme, and in order to demonstrate a clear response, we need to have a really clear understanding of the question. So by highlighting some of the keywords, hopefully it will help you to stay more focused on the question. Also, by reading this question, we know that when we get to reading both sources, and whilst we're reading each one, we can be highlighting evidence, sentences that tell us something about nursing that might help us to write a summary of the similarities. Question 4 then, very similar. I've highlighted again some of the keywords from the question. An important word I've added in here is, for this question, you need not to refer to the whole of source A. That can be a little bit misleading. It might, for some students, may feel that you need to refer to everything in that source and try and find quotes from all over the place. That's not true. You can stick to any part of the extract. You don't need to focus on just the start or the end or the whole thing. You can refer to evidence anywhere in that extract. And again, it's source A and B. This time we're comparing. I've highlighted the word compare. Compare means we need to compare both sources. We need to be using connectives like similarly or in contrast to, so that we can really show the examiner that we are comparing the different views and experiences of the nursing profession. And I've highlighted that part as well. We can't compare what we like in this question, sadly. We have to compare what the examiner wants us to compare. And in this case, it's what people think about the nursing profession. And by highlighting these parts of the question, hopefully now that we've done that, we can now start reading the sources. And by having a really good idea of what the questions are asking us to do, it means that when we're reading those texts, we can be highlighting sentences that show a perspective of the nursing profession. It means, therefore, that when we get to question 4, we don't need to panic read again. We've already got some evidence that we collected in the opening 10 minutes of that exam, and hopefully eliminates that need to reread and reread and reread and lose valuable time from writing. So give it a go. Hopefully you've annotated those questions as we've gone along. You can have a go at answering those questions now. You can have a go at reading the texts and finding the evidence that would help you to answer those questions, because that would be the second thing to do after annotating the questions, to do the same with the extracts. And you can also download fresh exam papers as well to have a go with also. You can download those resources at mrcrawfordenglish.co.uk or by clicking the link below. Give it a go. Laters.